Hi everyone, Dr. Victoria Skirbo here at the Seeds of Transformation in Wareham, Massachusetts. This is part 3 of my Astrology and Kabbalah of July 2019. Part 1, I spoke of the numerology and Kabbalah, the numerology and vibrational energy of July 2019, where it sits on the tree of life, what that means energetically. I also did a little astrology in that one. And then the second one, I did the solar eclipse that's happening on the 2nd of July and how that is affecting us, and then also how it's affecting the chart of the United States. So you can take a look at those. I think they're very good and very informative. As with the second one that I did, my technical capabilities are limited. So I'm going to do my best putting the charts up and see if we can learn what we need to learn from this experience. So that being said, the lunar eclipse occurs on July 16th, 2019. And on the east coast of the U.S., and the chart that I've erected is for Washington, D.C., because I am looking at it in relation to how it's affecting the United States, as well as looking at the chart itself, occurs at 5:38 p.m. Eastern Time. And so we will not see this eclipse here on the East Coast, or not on the West Coast either, I guess. Because of course it's the moon isn't up, the sun is. But I think maybe Europe will see it. I'm not sure. I didn't check that, but if my calculations in my head are right, Europe will see it. This is a full moon lunar eclipse, and of course you need it to be near the nodes of the moon to be an eclipse. And in order for it to be a lunar eclipse, it has to be on a full moon. And so this is the full moon. Full moons in general are points of awareness. It's also when something becomes evident. We also have a sense of perspective with the full moon. At the new moon, the moon and the sun are together. You can't actually see the moon. But when we get to the full moon, it's the sun and the moon are as far away as they can be from one another. And they're in opposition. And opposition is an aspect in astrology which brings awareness. And from that awareness, then we move into the second half of the hemicycle. So from the new moon to the full moon, this has been it has been a building cycle. And when we get to the full moon, we see what has sort of been wrought. And then from the full moon to the next new moon, what has been born or birthed is disseminated into the outer world. Okay? So here is the eclipse chart. This is for the United States of America. Hopefully you can see it. I have highlighted the sun and the moon here. And in the chart of the not for the United States, in the chart that is erected for Washington, D.C., this is in the axis of the second house and the 8th house. The house of life and death, the house of resources and debt. So we have an awareness here. The sun is in a conjunction to the north node of the moon. Incidentally, Venus is there as well, and Venus is conjunct the north node of the moon, Venus in Cancer. And the south node of the moon, we have, of course, we still have Pluto and Saturn, and now the moon at 25 degrees of Capricorn. The moon is conjunct Pluto, and this is the relationship between the moon and Pluto is actually in a new phase. Okay, Pluto is here, and the moon is moving away from Pluto. So new phase is always about something new. New beginning as well, even though it's happening at the south node. Okay, so Pallas Athena, which I discussed when I was talking about, and let me just highlight this for you. Pallas Athena, which I talked about in the chart for the new moon solar eclipse is actually, let's see, is very, very, in a very close, a very tight square to the nodes of the moon. And so we have the issue of social justice up again. And the resolution node for that, in this case, is actually the North Node in Cancer. And so how do we find social justice at this time? We move in the direction of the North Node in Cancer in that 8th house. Cancer in the, actually no, the node itself is in the 7th house. And so it's about relating to others in Cancer in a nurturing and loving way. And so this is another example of the direction forward. We become aware of our need to get back into our hearts, to reclaim that part of ourselves. Okay. All right, let's look at how it's affecting the United States chart, because it is, again, making major conjunctions. So here we have the chart of the United States of America right here. This is, we have the eclipse. Here we go. Here's the eclipse. This is the sun in the eclipse, and this is the moon in the eclipse. And the sun is actually exactly conjunct Mercury in the chart of the United States. So the sun is illuminating Mercury. Mercury rules the media. Mercury rules communication. Mercury rules transportation. Okay? And then over here, we have the sun and the moon in Capricorn, and it is conjunct Pluto in Capricorn in the United States chart. It's only about 3 degrees away. Pluto in the United States chart is many things. Pluto in the United States chart can be power. It's in the 2nd house. It's in Capricorn. Ownership of land. Again, we talk about the wound of and the stealing of the natives' land, and then, of course, the enslavement of the Africans to work that land. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see that, but this here is the south node of the United States again. And Pluto is actually, it's wide, but it is conjunct the south node of the United States. So this is, and it's interesting because the United States, people came to the United States, of course, before it was the United States. They came to the New World to find freedom from the tyranny of the old world, and what has it brought but tyranny along with it. And so there's a lesson in there. You can't run away from your problems. You have to solve them where you're at. And so now there isn't much of a world left to conquer, right? Unless you want to talk about space, and there are those people who want to go out into space, right? But that's a discussion for another day. I was listening to this, I think he was a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, I think, or author, and he was talking about the symbology of the wall that Trump is talking about as a symbology that we have as a humanity hit the wall. There's no place else to discover on the planet. We'd have to go out of the planet or perhaps under the planet to do any further discovery. And so to a certain extent, perhaps we have hit a wall. And now that there's no place else to go, we have to learn to get along with one another. And to a certain extent, America has to show the way for that, right? So, what else is going on? Well, we still have Uranus square the nodes of the moon. Uranus takes a long time to move, and in fact, I think it's even closer to an exact square. So it's actually moved closer to the exact square to the nodes of the moon. And so we still need to reevaluate our past and what we've done to the natives and what we've done to the Africans that came as slaves. That's part of the healing process here. Let's see what else. Chiron in Aries is square the sun. Chiron in Aries is square the sun and the moon. So the Chiron in Aries, we have in America, we have a Chiron at 20 degrees of Aries. And so we will be having our Pluto return in 2022. After that, we're going to have our another Chiron return, because we have Chiron returns every like 50 years or so. And so, let's see, 50 years, and to say 250, does that mean we've had 5 Chiron returns? I'm sorry about my math. I cannot do math in my head. It's bad for a numerologist, right? The other thing that's happening at this time is that Neptune is starting it's in the midst of its opposition to natal Neptune. That's actually going to become exact when we have our Pluto return. So all kinds of transpersonal energies happening 2022 to the United States chart, which is going to require us to evolve. So might as well get started now. Let's see what else. So the full moon brings awareness, and the axis in the United States chart is 2nd house and 8th house. 2nd house is assets, resources, and 8th house is shared resources. The sun illuminating the need for shared resources. And the whole idea of how disempowering. It's like we have a dream to own land and to be part of something and to have our own little piece. And yet that's the promise. They make it harder and harder in order to get to actually get that piece of land. And perhaps that's another lesson for us. Who really owns the land? Nobody. We all. This is our planet. And just because you have the money and the resources doesn't mean that you deserve to share the resources any more than anybody else does on the planet. That's what the natives, that was the whole idea that the natives had, the Native Americans and the indigenous peoples. And, you know, they have been trying to destroy the indigenous people for millennia, centuries, a long time, certainly in this country, in Australia, and in Europe, you know, previous to that, the indigenous cultures, they're still around, but they have been marginalized. And the new age, the Aquarian age, is in part based on similar principles to the way the indigenous people lived. And we have to get into a better relationship with our planet if we expect to survive. So we have a lot to learn. And what's interesting about that is that many of the people who are coming to the southern border are actually indigenous people from Central America who have been sent, who have had to escape terrible situations because of the way the United States has interfered and mismanaged the land. And then you add climate change onto that, and we have the disaster that we find now. We have to take responsibility for our part in that. Okay, I think that's all I want to say about this eclipse. It does activate Pluto and Mercury, the opposition that's natally in the United States chart. And it's speaking truth to power. And that truth to power comes from women and children and families and a sense of community. The South Node is where we're moving away from. And with Pluto there on the United States, South Node, and Uranus as an archetype of trauma, it's about moving away from the dissociation and being in our heads and thinking that we have to control everything and move into a more cooperative and loving and nurturing environment. So that's what I want to say about the full moon lunar eclipse. I'm losing my voice. I may get back on and do a little bit more on the astrology. Perhaps I'll just mention it now. probably the other big thing that's happening during this month, and actually there's quite a few, but if you watch my dailies, I talk about everything that happens in the day, so you won't miss out if you watch the dailies. But Mercury goes retrograde, and it goes retrograde in Leo, and then it retrogrades back into Cancer. Retrograde Mercuries are an opportunity for us to review how we think. In Leo, it has to do with dominion. It has to do with how we think we're in charge, or that, we are, what's the word? Exemplary. We have to relook at that. And then in Cancer, we have to look at the way we treat women and children. This whole thing down at the border is really just causing suffering and trauma to children who have absolutely no power, to parents who have absolutely no power, so that the prison industrial system, Pluto in Capricorn, can thrive. It's immoral. It's disgusting, quite frankly. And we have to wake up to that. It's been going on for a long time. This is not new. Just like everything else, though, Trump has brought it to a fever pitch. And at some point, I've said this before, and it's hard for me to say, but at some point down the line, when we really realize what's been going on, and we take the action to fix it, we're going to be grateful on some level that Donald Trump was our president for the time that he was, so that he could show us just how messed up it is. So, it's almost done. That's almost done. I think his presidency is almost done. I've said that on a few readings. So, exactly when and exactly how, I'm not sure. But these eclipses are going to inform us quite a bit. And eclipses do last, even though the eclipse is, for a moment in a day, the point where the eclipse happens is sensitive for longer than that. And so when things come over and activate that point, we start to see changes. And what's interesting is the Pluto-Neptune conjunction that's happening on the 12th, I think it is, the 12th of January 2020. That's the one everybody's talking about, Pluto-Saturn conjunction, is actually happening at 23 degrees of Pluto, and that's just minutes away from the moon in this full moon lunar eclipse. And so there's something about this full moon lunar eclipse that is seeding the next 45 years and how we are going to wield our power. Capricorn. Let's do it with love and compassion. Thank you for joining me for this. If you would like a reading with me, I do astrology readings, Kabbalah, numerology readings. You can just contact me at my website, thesiegeoftransformation.com. You can email me at vickyscurbo@gmail.com. I'm easy enough to connect to. I hope to hear from you. And thank you for all the people who have purchased readings and had readings. I really enjoy meeting all of you. You're all amazing, amazing people. And I think together we can really make a difference in this world and have the world we dream of. Have a great day. I'll see you soon. Bye.